They say the Amazon remembers everything, every whisper, every scream, every drop of blood that ever touched its soil. But there is one story the jungle guards most fiercely, a story older than language, older than the stars that hang above it. The story of the blood whisperers. In the beginning, there was only darkness and the sound of rain. The tribes of the forest feared the fire. They saw it as a living thing, a beast that devoured the trees and drank the air. But there was one tribe that did not fear it. They listened, because when the flames danced, they heard something. Voices. At first, it was just a hum, a strange rhythm that rose and fell with the wind. But soon, the fire began to speak. The elders said the flame carried the breath of the dead, that when the body returned to ash, the soul lingered in the smoke, trapped between worlds. And if one was brave enough to offer a piece of themselves, the fire would answer. That was their belief, their curse, their gift. They called themselves the Blood Whisperers. Their village lay deep beneath the emerald ceiling of the Amazon, a place where no light reached the ground. Houses made of woven vines and bones circled a single pit of fire that had burned for centuries, feeding on the roots of the earth. Every night, the tribe would gather in silence. No laughter, no words, only the sound of the fire breathing. They said the flames were alive, that they carried the memories of all who had burned before. To the outsiders, it was madness, but to the blood whisperers, it was truth. They believed that through blood, they could speak to the ancestors. The ritual was never spoken of in daylight. It was done only when the moon was swallowed by cloud, and the jungle grew still enough for the fire to listen. The youngest of the tribe, a girl named Irana, was the first to claim she had heard a voice call her name from the flame. The elders warned her, "The fire does not speak to the living child. It calls only for those who are ready to burn." But Irana did not fear it. She said the voice that spoke her name was her mother's, lost to fever seasons ago. And when she touched the flame, it did not burn her. That night, the tribe watched in awe. For the first time, the flame rose higher. Red turned to gold, gold to white. And in the light, faces began to form in the smoke. The ancestors had returned. The blood whisperers were no longer just a tribe. They had become the bridge between life and death, between flesh and spirit. But what they didn't know was that every word spoken through the flame came with a price. And soon, that price would consume them all. The moon had vanished behind clouds that night. The air hung thick as if the jungle itself was holding its breath. The blood whisperers gathered once more, circling the eternal flame. It was time. The rite of ash and spirit, a ceremony forbidden to all but the elders, was about to begin again. The old seer, Tamoa, stepped forward. Her body was painted in crimson clay, her eyes blind from years of smoke and visions. She spoke in a voice that cracked like burning wood. "The fire is hungry," she said. "It calls for blood to speak. The ancestors wait in silence. Who among us will offer the breath of life tonight?" One by one, the tribe's voices began to hum low, rhythmic, ancient. Their hands moved as one, drawing circles in the air, tracing the shapes of serpents and suns. Irana, the girl who once touched the flame, stepped forward again. Her face was calm, eyes reflecting the flickering light. She knelt before the sacred pit, her fingers trembling as she held a small bowl carved from obsidian. Inside it, a few drops of her own blood. She whispered, not in words, but in a sound the jungle had never heard before, a melody that seemed to rise from the roots of the earth. The elders watched as the fire began to twist, its shape no longer bound by air. It bent toward her, like something alive, a serpent made of flame, hissing and whispering in tongues unknown. The whispers grew louder. Words formed faint, distant, ancient. Irana's eyes filled with tears. "It is her," she breathed. "It is my mother." The tribe gasped. No one had ever claimed to hear the spirit so clearly. The fire pulsed, like a heartbeat, and then it spoke. The sound was not human, not animal, something in between. It spoke of the first fire, the one that gave birth to both life and death. It spoke of how humans were once part of the flame, beings of light who fell into flesh and forgot their true form. The spirits called this tribe the keepers of the breath, guardians of the last spark from the beginning of the world. The blood whisperers had always believed they were chosen. That night, they were certain. But as the voices faded, the flame began to twist again, faster, wilder. The colors deepened from gold to red, from red to black. Smoke turned thick, forming shapes that no human eyes had ever seen. Arana screamed, not in fear, but in revelation. "They are not all ancestors," she cried. "Some were never human." The elders rushed to her side, chanting louder, trying to contain the ritual, but it was too late. The fire had heard too many voices. Too many souls were speaking at once. The jungle roared. The flames rose higher than the trees. Faces, hundreds of them, appeared in the smoke, crying, laughing, whispering secrets of creation and death. The fire was no longer a bridge between worlds. It had become the door itself. The ritual was broken. The air split open with heat and light. Arana fell into the fire, and the flames did not consume her. They carried her image, burning and alive, into the smoke until she was gone. When the fire calmed, her body was nowhere to be found. Only her voice remained faint, echoing in the crackle of the embers. And when the tribe listened, they realized the fire had learned her name. In the deepest shadows of the Amazon, far beyond where satellites can see or maps dare to draw, there is said to live a tribe older than the river itself. A tribe that never ages. A tribe that speaks through fire. Locals whisper of them in trembling voices, as susurradores de sang, the blood whisperers. No one has ever seen them and lived to tell their story. But deep in 1974, a small exploration team vanished while searching for a lost missionary group. Only one tape recorder was found still playing. The sound of fire whispering names no one could recognize. Tonight, we'll go deeper than anyone before to uncover the mystery of the blood whisperers and the chilling ritual that keeps their spirits alive. The Amazon at night is not quiet. It breathes, it moves, it watches. Dr. Marcus Layton knew this well, a veteran anthropologist obsessed with the last uncontacted tribes. He had spent years chasing rumors, children who spoke in voices not their own, fires that burned without smoke, and drawings of men with red eyes hidden inside cave walls. In his journal, the last entry reads, "They don't use words, they use the blood." The fire listens. Marcus and his two guides, Joe and Raphael, followed an ancient river known only by its indigenous name, Kuraru, meaning path of the sleeping gods. The river twisted like a living serpent through thick walls of vines. They weren't alone. Every step felt watched. Joe, a local, uttered prayers under his breath. The Kuraru, it doesn't like strangers. But Marcus didn't listen. His eyes burned with the hunger of discovery. He wanted to prove the tribe existed. By the third night, the jungle began to change. The trees grew thinner, the air heavier, and the sounds stopped. That was when they found it, a totem carved from black wood, slick with dried crimson sap. It looked human, but its mouth was open, screaming upward. Etched beneath it were strange spiral symbols, like fire coiling inside veins. Marcus ran his fingers across it and whispered, "Blood spirals. Energy flow symbols. These are ancient." Suddenly, Joe screamed. His hand, sliced open by the totem, began bleeding down the carvings. The moment his blood touched it, the air shimmered. The dried sap began to glow. The totem hissed, and somewhere deep in the forest, a voice answered. The night that followed was unlike any other. Marcus and his team camped near the totem, but none of them slept. Not because they didn't want to, because they couldn't. The jungle pulsed with a strange rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Every few minutes, the air shimmered again, and faint whispering could be heard as though voices were crawling through the firelight itself. Raphael shouted, "Let's go. This place isn't for us." But Marcus smiled in awe. "They're real." Raphael packed his things. "I'm leaving," he muttered, voice trembling. But Marcus, with wild eyes, only said, "No, listen, they're calling us." At dawn, smoke rose through the trees, not white, but red. The men followed it until they reached a clearing shaped like a perfect circle, scorched earth, black and dry. At the center stood an enormous stone basin filled with ash, and around it, bones, hundreds of them, human and animal alike, bleached by heat. Then, they appeared. Dozens of figures, skin painted in deep crimson clay, eyes hidden behind masks carved from wood and bone. Their bodies were thin, almost fragile, but their movements were precise, rhythmic, like the jungle itself had taught them to breathe. One figure, taller than the rest, stepped forward. A woman. Her mask was carved into the face of a jaguar, and when she spoke, her voice carried like wind through flame. "You walk on cursed ground, outsiders." Marcus stepped forward, trying to sound brave. "We come to learn, to understand your people." The woman tilted her head. Then she said something that made even the fire flicker. "Our people died before your world was born. We are only their whispers." Without warning, two tribesmen grabbed Raphael and Joe. They dragged them toward the stone basin. Marcus screamed, "No, stop!" But no one listened. The woman raised her hands, and the air around her rippled. The fire inside the basin erupted, not orange, but a glowing crimson light, like liquid blood. She dipped her fingers into the flames. They didn't burn. Then she painted symbols on Marcus's forehead: spirals, lines, and eyes. "Fire remembers the blood," she whispered. "Every drop tells a story. Every death feeds the flame." Raphael tried to run, but his foot caught a snare. The tribesmen chanted louder, their voices merging with the crackling fire. Joe screamed until his voice became part of the whisper. Marcus fell to his knees, trembling. Through the smoke, he saw something impossible. Faces inside the fire. Men, women, children, thousands of them speaking without mouths. And they all whispered one name: Marcus. He didn't remember fainting, but when he awoke, the clearing was empty. No tribe, no bones, only ashes and a circle of symbols burned into the ground where he had fallen. His camera still worked. The footage recovered years later showed only one thing: Marcus sitting by the fire, alone, whispering in a language no one could identify, his eyes glowing faintly red. Experts claim the firelight reflected strangely on the lens, but the villagers near Kiraru still swear if you wander too close at night, you'll see him there. A man speaking softly to the flames, listening to the whispers of blood. "If anyone finds this, don't follow the fire." Those were the first words on the tape. Crackled, distorted, spoken in a trembling voice that could only belong to Marcus Vale. It was discovered by a rescue team 3 years after his disappearance. Buried under roots and vines, wrapped in decaying cloth near a blackened campsite deep in the Amazon. The jungle had swallowed everything else: tents, supplies, even the bones. But not the recorder. It was as if the forest itself wanted it found. Marcus's voice trembled between sanity and delirium. "They're still here, not alive, not dead. I can see them in the fire. Every spark is an eye watching, every shadow a mouth whispering." He paused. Rain hits harder. Something moves in the background, slow, deliberate steps crunching on wet soil. "They told me the truth," he whispered. "We are not the first ones to walk this earth. The blood whisperers came before the rivers, before the trees. The fire gave them life, and took it back." There was a click, a rustle. Then his voice changed, softer, almost calm. "The flame doesn't die. It moves. It feeds. And when it burns inside you, you can hear everything. Everyone." Then a long silence. And faintly, just before the tape ended, another voice. Not Marcus's. A woman's whisper, deep and ancient. "He has joined us." Years later, a documentary team from Brazil set out to retrace Marcus's steps. They never found any sign of a tribe, but every night, around their campfire, they swore they heard voices. Low, rhythmic chanting carried by the wind. One of the cameramen recorded it, but when he played it back, the sound had changed. The chanting was gone, replaced by heavy breathing, and a voice whispering his name. The next morning, his tent was empty. All that remained was a single handprint burned into the canvas, 5 perfect red marks, like fingers made of ash. Experts still argue about Marcus Vale's story. Some call it myth, an illusion born from fear and isolation. Others believe the blood whisperers were real, the last remains of an ancient Amazonian civilization that mastered fire in ways science cannot explain. But the locals? They don't argue. They simply warn travelers never light a fire after midnight in the deep jungle. Because sometimes, the flame whispers back, "He has joined us."